Okay, I think we probably should go ahead and get started because we want to make sure we're respectful of your time. So we really appreciate you spending your extra time beyond your workday to participate in this webinar. Some of you may have had the opportunity to participate in our part one, where we kind of introduced the Bridging for Math Strength resources. And Dr. Jennifer Suh and Dr. Teresa Wills are here with us again to kind of take a deeper dive and really learn about the great aspects of these resources and how you can utilize them in your instruction. So I'm going to go ahead and let Jen and Teresa kind of take over because they are running the show tonight. So thank you so much, Jennifer and Teresa.
Thank you so much, Kristen. It's great to see everyone. It's wonderful to see that we have teachers, coaches, administrators from different parts of Virginia. I was at Hopewell at one point doing some professional development. I haven't gone as far as Danville, but Norfolk and Virginia Beach, Petersburg, those are all districts that we had some partnerships with. So it's great to see you all. Please do put in the chat where you're from. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to also network. So we're hoping that this deep dive into the bridging for math strength work will really kind of give you an opportunity to also network. So welcome. So how many of you guys were here the first session? If you could use your, if you could raise your hand using the modality, that'd be great. We see some folks. Oh, wonderful. And we do have some folks who are also teacher designers. So I'll tell a little bit about the project, but we have some folks who actually helped us create some of these modules for us. This is a partnership, as you can tell, between the Virginia Department of Education and George Mason. And so we're very, very excited to share with you tonight a deep dive. And this is a K-2 session, and we also have a 3-8 session later on. So hopefully if some of you guys teach both grade bands, you're welcome. So our agenda is packed. We're hoping to give you a good intro, whether you're here at first session or not. We'd love to kind of provide you with some of the components, give you a little overview, but then we're going to have a chance to kind of explore the modules, and we have some activities that really allow you to have fun looking at some student work, and then also look at those bridging activities that we have. So we'll do that, and then we'll have a chance to summarize. So if you haven't done so yet, please change your Zoom name. Please put the grade level and your first name so that Teresa can kind of assign breakout rooms later. So. All right, so that's our agenda. And I want to kind of share the perspective that I shared. This was kind of front and center when we designed the Math Strengths project, the Bridging for Math Strengths. As you know, a lot of the important organizations up here, that's kind of our go-to organizations for math teachers, NCTM, NCSM, ASSM. And, you know, they really put out a call for educators to really focus on keeping the joy and humanity in teaching and learning as we, I can't say post-COVID, we're still in the midst of COVID, but, you know, as we re-entered and kind of, re-entered this school year, that was kind of front and center. And this notion of really focusing and teaching to students' strength is where this project kind of, was born. And so it's very important for us to kind of think about how we actually develop our students from all the assets they have. So, we really appreciated the way Beth Corbett and Karen Karp defined students' math strengths. And they wrote a great book called Strength-Based Math. And it really kind of broadened this notion of what we mean by math strengths. And so you can see that it includes dispositional strength, process and practices, as well as content. And so when we kind of think about that notion of math strengths, we know our students have very, very strong strength in a lot of these different domains. And so just kind of looking more kind of zooming in on those math competencies, we want our teachers to really look at like the dispositional strengths that they see in their students, as well as the process and practices. And of course, the content is always something that we have in mind, but appreciating all of these different strengths that students come with. And this is really the kind of like all these different I guess you can kind of call them different strands of strength, really kind of tied together to build this very, very strong math identity for our students. Todos recently wrote a wonderful article, Where's Manuel, rejecting the notion of learning loss. And, instead of, thinking about learning loss, we really want to reframe the work that we're doing. And, we call it bridging for math strength, but you may call it something different. But it's this notion of building back and building back stronger. So I hope that these modules help you do that. And you'll see that Beth Corbett and Karen Karp has this nice illustration of the strength-based cycle. And we're going to do some of this work. We're going to identify student strength, look at some of the ways that we can target the areas of where we want to push our students next. As we're looking at formative assessment, we're always looking for the edges of their understanding and thinking about where do we move them forward. So this is just really helpful for us to kind of frame. And as you're sharing some of this work, perhaps some of these slides will help you in your professional learning communities. So I'd like to take a moment because whether you've used the Math Strength website or not, I'd love to kind of give you a quick overview. Last time it was more of kind of a overview, but today, since we're going to go on a deep dive, I thought maybe we would move over to the Math Strength website, and then I'll kind of talk about the components within the Math Strength website. So I'm going to navigate to our website. And if you come to our website, the homepage obviously will show that our work is really at the heart of formative assessment is this idea of finding the edges of students' learning, helping them take up possibility for growth. So for us, that's kind of where we're headed. To kind of provide you with a little bit of, the background around, the design features, we did put in a professional learning link here, and a lot of our work looks at learning progressions and trajectories. And these are not new terms for us as educators, but it's really important to kind of think about how we can use this in an asset-based way. So I'll kind of share with you some of the ways that we're thinking about that. And then again, we know teachers have and love curate lists. These are not exhaustive lists of rich tasks and places to go for that, as well as routines, but we think that these are really good ones to start with. So we provided some resources for you and your teachers to explore games, routines, and rich tasks, which are the three staple components that each of our module has. So you'll get to see that. We also know how important family connection is. And as we're kind of getting into the mid semester where, parents are curious about what their students are learning, and we're thinking about how parents and families can support student. And we're thinking about, back to school night, maybe parent teacher conference, perhaps some of these resources will help you as well. So let's take a deep dive and just kind of look at the components. I'm going to go to grade 3. And as you can see that the green standards is what's live. And actually, we're going to roll out a lot more this week. We have a few more that have been vetted and now are ready for upload. But I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the components because we're going to be actually looking at a module in more depth. So this might be familiar. I know this is a K-2 session, but I'm going to use 3.4 as an example. So this particular one, you can see the standard is listed. And when you pull down, you'll see that there's a just-in-time PD for our teachers. So we talked about, I kind of alluded to this when I said the kind of premise for the work really focuses on this idea of understanding the learning trajectory. And we really kind of centerpiece this piece of research because we know that students do not develop in locksteps. It's not kind of this step ladder development, but that students kind of have this trajectory where, as I mentioned last time, Jerry Confrey, who does a lot of work on learning trajectory, talked about a rock climbing wall where you see those kind of rocks and you kind of, and so kids might reach from their, prior understanding about number sense and connect it to a lot of different funds of knowledge. So we actually kind of try to unpack some of the learning trajectory so that you could actually see it more as a continuum, not so much like just like a standard by grades, but just a learning trajectory about how students, about research that, kind of details how students typically develop these particular concepts. And so when we look at that, it becomes a very asset-based approach because students are along that continuum and there are different places in the continuum, but for us, it's just a matter of knowing where they are and then moving them forward, right? So that they're not below grade level, all of the deficit language that we want to kind of eradicate from our language and also just from our frame of reference. We start thinking about, okay, where are students? What's their strength? What do they know? And then how do we move them forward? So this centerpiece is really important. And then the important look fors, right? We know that there are certain conceptual benchmarks and maybe guideposts that help you figure out where are my students within that learning trajectory. And with the emphasis on high leverage teaching practice, we really want to make sure that we pose purposeful questions that make math visible, that advances their thinking, that probes their understanding. And so we try to put some questions that would help teachers kind of start generating their own, but maybe start with a few. When you kind of look at this is kind of the just-in-time PD. But if you look at this, and I'm going to just kind of show you that it does go up, so you can just see the main things here. You see this bridge, and you don't really see a bridge, but here's a logo that shows the bridge. And when we talked about this project, we said, you know what? We know that there's a lot, very complex trajectory, and we can read like, books and books and research on trajectories. But what we really want to highlight is, we have a targeted SOL standard concept, and we know that students come with some strengths. And so one of the things that our teacher designers really thought through was this notion of, okay, so what are those bridging concepts that will support and help our students advance to feel really successful with that targeted standards? And so our kind of resources on the right here, bridging concepts, is really targeting this centerpiece, this bridging concepts idea. And we know that VDOE has a lot of great resources already for Standard 3.4. Their MIPs, right? The math instructional plans, they have rich tasks that align to it. But we wanted to kind of look and see what are these bridging concepts and what are these bridging activities. And so that's what you see here on the right. If you did want to look at all of the great resources that VDOE has, you could click on the module, and the module has a galore, like a whole collection of wonderful resources of Virginia Department of Resources on the other resources, as well as some of the work that we highlight on the web page. So the module is something that I think you'll appreciate because it has everything. It's a one-stop shop for all of our resources. But let's say a teacher is just really ready to kind of check where the kids are and then see like what's next. And so we're hoping that you've already used the Virginia Department of Education's formative quick checks. They're called just-in-time quick checks. And so we went ahead and put those assessments right here. In kindergarten and first grade, we actually have some Seesaw assessments. So you'll take a look at that later as well. But we know that there are some quick checks that we can use here, as well as some wonderful routines that really promote math discussion, allows everyone to participate. So this equitable participation is something that you're really trying to promote when you do math routines, because all students can engage in this. So again, these are resources that teachers have at their fingertips, like, I'm teaching multiplication division, and I really love this dog treat packs, especially because I have a new puppy and my kids all know about my puppy. And so this is something really connected to maybe their teacher's life or even their own personal life. So this idea of images that really communicate these idea of arrays and equal groups. But, there's also a task that, Amara's tile, it kind of thinks about arrays. So there's a whole combination of tasks. This game, how many rows, is also a nice array activity. So that gives you some of the components, that gives you kind of an overview of what we see in these different modules. And you'll get a chance to really explore that with your grade level team. And for us, we think that this is going to really help you as you plan or maybe coach. So for example, understanding the learning trajectory, the bridges will help you with that. That would lead you to kind of looking at the formative assessment quick checks that are there and really taking the time to kind of assess and analyze students' strength as well as where they should go next. And so once you have this kind of direction of where to go next, our teacher designers have already created some wonderful bridging activities. So again, this is a really great way for you to have everything at your fingertips. To kind of give you a perspective, we have an example. And so let's
take a look at this 3rd grade standard. Because we're focusing on strengths, we know that our students can skip count by 2s, 5s, and 10s, and that they can determine sums and differences. We also know our bridging concepts that are going to be essential so that students can be successful on their SOL for that grade level, in this case, which is multiplying and dividing through 10 times 10. In each module, you'll find big ideas. The important ones of this grade level is knowing that there's multiple models for showing multiplication, and that there's a relationship between multiplication and division. There's also a vertical articulation section, which lets you know how the standard progresses from 1st grade to 2nd grade, in 3rd grade, and then up to 4th grade. Let's take a look at 2 different students. Here we have student A. And if you look at their work, they do know their multiplication facts, and they do know how to draw pictures. However, the picture doesn't really show a multiplication model. What's next? This student should look at more ways to see different multiplication models. Here we have student B. They're able to show multiplication models in terms of equal groups. But what's next? That they can find out more different types of models, such as arrays and number lines. In each module, you'll get a routine. These routines sometimes will benefit your whole class and sometimes should be specific to student A or student B based on their results from the formative assessment. Here in this case, number talk arrays would work for both students because they both need to see different models of multiplication. Also, the same but different math is a routine that would be great for student A and B because it showcases the commonalities between multiplication and division. There are 2 tasks in this module. The first task is all about looking at arrays. This would benefit both students. And the second task looks at equal groups and the relationship between multiplication and division. Now, student B was really showing strong evidence of making equal groups, but we didn't quite see the relationship between multiplication and division. So for student B, we'll be focusing on that area, whereas student A will be focusing on everything. We also have a game. In this case, the game is all about arrays. This would be great for both student A and student B because we saw that they still had those strengths in multiplication, but our bridging concept was this idea of arrays.
All right. So I hope that kind of made it clear, this instructional cycle that I was sharing, but at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Teresa and see if we have any questions. I do see some hand raised, Teresa. So I wasn't sure.
I think it was from your earlier question. I've been monitoring the chat also.
Gotcha. Wonderful.
All right, folks, so let's give you a chance to work with a small group of people. I've done my best to pair you up with people of a similar grade level. You should, at this point, make sure that you have a slide deck in front of you. I've posted the link in the chat. That's really important before moving to your breakout rooms. Once in your breakout room, you're going to look at the 2 pieces of student work assigned to your grade level, and then you're going to find those student strengths. If you'd like a place to type your thinking, there are slides that you can use directly on there and you can type on it. You can also just have this as a verbal discussion. But just like the video, focus on the student work and their strengths. We'll come back in 10 minutes, discuss what you found, and then we'll dive in even deeper. So without further ado, here are our breakout groups.
Oh, I just want to mention that there's, Teresa, they're not coming back for part 3, right? And 4?
They're going to come back for part 2.
Okay, sorry.
All right, here's the link again to the sections. And here are our breakout rooms. I'm glad to have you back here. All right, folks, welcome back. So at this point, you should have been able to look at a piece of student work or two. Instead of calling them student A and student B, we actually gave them names and focused on their strengths. What that's going to do is prepare us for looking at the bridging concepts, and then that next step, that standard where we are going to be teaching. I wanted to take a moment to showcase one of the things that we have done in kindergarten and first grade, and to support students with things like dexterity, amongst others, and that is creating seesaw activities. So you guys should see this seesaw activity for K.2B. That was the one where you looked at the student work. And in here, the students could actually count the fish in the fish tank and move them in order from greatest to least or least to greatest. It also allows students to circle on top of them or write directly on top as if they are using a pointer, a mouse. And it allows them to record their voice. So if you want to hear what they're doing, you can ask them to record and they can do that there.
Teresa, can I interrupt you just for a second? You had the beautiful seesaw screen, and then we saw the seesaw entrance page.
Do you see it now?
Yep. There we go.
There we go.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you. So again, students have the ability to move things around on the screen as they're putting these, in this case, the fish tanks, in order. And it also allows them to write directly on it, and you can see their thinking as they're going. They can record it. So that'll really help out with that K2 kind of dexterity and really seeing what they know, as opposed to just, is this the right answer or wrong answer? So that was an important addition there. All right, folks. So you just took a look at some students' work, whether it was kinder, first grade, or second grade. And we're going to take a minute going back into our breakout rooms. This time, we are going to look at the next step. So we will remove these little yellow sections for you. And what you're going to see is we want you to think about what's next. Just like the video showed, what are the next steps for Ava and Blake? And then finally, the individualized activities. You're going to go into the module. You're going to check out the routine for this standard, the task for this standard, and the game for this standard, and make some individualized recommendations for Ava based on Ava's work, and for Blake based on Blake's work. Again, our website that we're sending you to is down in the bottom. It is mathstrength.org. You'll also see it on your direction slide, which is slide 7. So talk about what's next and which of those games, routines, and tasks really should be individualized for each student. I'm going to recreate those, reopen those breakout rooms for you. Again, make sure you have the slide deck available. Ready? We're all together. Welcome back to the main room. Well, folks, it was really nice to be able to see so many groups chose to write directly on the slides. So we were able to see your thinking as you were moving through it. We could tell that you were really analyzing Ava and Blake and what each student can do based on their strengths. And then those individualized activities. So we gave you a task, a routine, and a game that we think really target that standard and those bridging concepts. But as you saw, the game, the routine, and the task isn't a one-size-fits-all model based on their student strengths and their bridging concepts and where they are. A routine, task, and game can be very individualized. So those came across on all the slides. It was wonderful to see that in real time. But we have a question for you all. I'm going to go ahead and make that large for you on my screen. And we're going to do a chat waterfall. Chat waterfall, everybody find your chat box. Start typing your thinking, but don't hit enter yet. We're all going to hit enter at the same time for equitable think time. So in the chat box, how do the routines, rich task, and games bridge students' understanding? How do the routines, rich tasks, and games bridge students' understanding? All right, we can start that waterfall, but like any waterfall, it keeps on going. So keep putting your ideas there in the chat. Oh, and there's some lovely ones in here. Kathleen Morris, I'd love to hear you expand a little bit on this creating connections part. That's so important in mathematics. How do you see that in those resources?
Well, I guess I was thinking that they start with one representation. Let's say we were looking at the first grade representation with the dominoes or the dot card or the 10 frame with the counters. No, I guess it was anyway. So they see that representation, but then you present another representation and another and another, and each time drawing a connection back so that students see how those ideas can be represented in many ways, but it's still basically the same idea, because we know that young children don't always make those connections. They don't see 5 cubes the same as 5 children and the same as 5, books or something like that. So making those connections for young children so that they can start to develop, you scaffold it, go back to very concrete, move it forward and so forth. Make the connections between the representations and the ideas, and also then scaffold it to further away from concrete as time goes along. Just a very loose thought.
Great noticing. That's exactly what we wanted you to get out of it. Lisa, you mentioned that there's opportunities for differentiating. And as a math specialist, you work in a variety of grade levels. Why is this so important to you?
Well, it seems like, if you can take one activity, everybody can work on it, but you can differentiate it to meet the needs of the different kids. It seemed like a lot of the activities in there had so many sort of low floor, high ceiling opportunities that you could make little changes, use smaller numbers, or do something slightly different, or extend to the next standard just a little bit based on what your groups need.
Absolutely.
And
Amy Hutchins, I'd love to hear from you here. You mentioned that this is a great to meet students' needs, but also for the lessons. Why is this so useful for teachers?
Okay, I'll unmute it now. I shared the website when we first introduced it, but I was going to go back and do more with them, but I think it would help them, and they would seem pretty excited, the teachers that wants to go, that everything was in one place and I can see we're working on using the quick checks to help plan centers and stations, and I like how this was set up, using find their strength, what to do next. I just thought it was very helpful.
Absolutely. That was a foundation of this program, is seeing the student strengths. Carol, I also noticed you mentioned student strengths. Is that something that you all are starting to see more in your school? Is this meeting your need to find things that are based on student strengths?
Absolutely. And I was working with Lisa, and we were noticing the same sort of things, finding the strengths and then working with that and then moving them forward through the trajectory, the steps in the trajectory, things like that.
Absolutely. So folks, that was the purpose of this. What we hope is during this PD, we've provided you an opportunity to look at actual student work. From there, understand their strengths, understand their next steps, and then using the resources on the website, be able to differentiate a very individualized next steps for 2 students, or in your cases, the multiple students in your classes. That way that the foundations are there to bridge them from their strength all the way to the standard. Jen, I think you're going to go ahead and wrap us up. Do you want me
Yeah.
to keep my screen up for you?
Yeah, that would be great. And, we're very excited that you're using it with your teachers, and whether you're a classroom teacher or a coach, the fact that you're able to share it with your peers, this is very exciting for us. We want you all to be the ambassadors. But you saw the strength of the student work, like just looking at formative assessment really helps us see how these modules come alive. And we also know that you're the users, and this whole entire project was built by teachers, for teachers. And we know that you also have some great ideas for us to even incorporate. So we do have this one link at every grade level. Again, this is a co-developed project, and we want to refine it as we go. So it's a very iterative process. The link is a Google form. It asks you if you tried any of the modules, give us some feedbacks. If you have some great rich tasks or games that we didn't mention, that would be awesome. Please put that. Or if you even do the quick checks, like some of you are saying that you're really kind of in the process of using quick checks to kind of then figure out how all the other activities could support. If you have some sample work that you would like to submit, I think it's something that our teachers would really, really love to see, like some of these like samples like we had for Ava and Blake. And we're kind of collecting some of that as well as we refine this project. This is a VDOE project, and we're very passionate about it. We want to try to provide you with a lot of wonderful tips. So if you think that, having more student work around formative assessment would help our teachers, please feel free to submit that, and we will kind of showcase some of that so that teachers can see how that connection works. So just wanted to put a plug in there about how you all could contribute as well to this project, and see it, get built, in time, as you'll see. And you'll see a lot of the other standards turn green. We chose green for George Mason, but we're very excited about this. And VDOE is vetting everything that we're developing with the teachers. And we're hoping that all of these standards will turn green by the end of next month, if not sooner. So keep coming back, and you'll see all these other standards that you'll hit second quarter and third quarter and fourth quarter, all there for you all. VDOE has a quick announcement. I want to thank you guys for being here, and please reach out to Teresa and myself for anything. If you're doing PD and you would like some resources or slide decks that we've shared, please reach out. We're very happy to support you in that way.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Teresa. And thank all of you. We really appreciate you being here after hours and probably after a long day of work. And we just appreciate all that you do for children across Virginia. So thank you so much for being here. We just wanted to let you know about some additional webinar series offerings that we have coming up next week. We have using small group instruction to address unfinished learning. We have elementary and secondary sessions. Those are repeating sessions. So if you attend the one on Monday, it'll be the same exact one on Thursday. So you don't need to go to both. They'll be identical. But we'll have Vicki Bodar and Catherine Munson doing the elementary session for that. And then Skip Tyler and Michelle Giglio will be doing our secondary session. And then we're super excited then also later in the month to have John Almroad and Kateri Thunder doing a session for us on structuring effective mathematics intervention. We know that this year is unlike any other, so they're going to really be talking about looking at evidence, student evidence of learning, and thinking about how to identify strengths, kind of like what you did today, and then how to move forward in structuring some of that intervention. So super excited to have those two offerings. We hope you can join us, and thank you again for being here.
And I did put the teacher direct link that has all of the different registration links for those webinars that Tina just talked about. So if you want to register before something else comes across your mind, go ahead and do it right now before you get off your computer. But yes, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate all your work that you're doing.
Have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.